Welcome, everyone. We're going to give people some time to get here, and we'll start soon. Give them a couple of minutes.
Junaid, we could see that. Just heads up when you brought that on.
Thank you for coming in today, guys. We'll get started in about another minute or two. Give some people more time to get here. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I want to introduce you guys to SRECTrade. They're a new sponsor of the HTA, so you'll be seeing them around a lot more often. So if this is your first HTA webinar, this is interactive. You have a question box down below your panel that you can enter your questions at any time. We're able to see them. So even if it's just a technical question, I can't hear the presenter, or I can't see the video very well, we can all see those questions, and so you'll be able to ask at any time. We are going to open the floor up to everybody at the end of the presentation to ask some Q&A. If you're calling in today and you're not joining via the app, we still want you to be able to participate. So go ahead and send me an email at eric@harbortrucker.com, and I can read your question for you to the presenters. So with that, I want to turn it over to Junaid from SRECTrade, and we want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you, Junaid, for putting this together for us.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Junaid Faruq. I'm the Senior Manager of Business Development here at SRECTrade, here on the left side of the screen. With me today, we have Stephen Eisenburg, who's our Chief Executive Officer, and Becca Teigenof, Program Manager, also at SRECTrade. So happy to be here, very happy to be joining the HTA. We're very excited to work with you guys. We joined recently, so yeah. And first off, I'm going to start off, Stephen, I was going to give a quick company overview before we start diving into some of the more technical details about the Low Carbon Fuel Standard program. So I'll hand it over to Stephen.
Thanks, Junaid. Thanks, Eric. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and healthy during these times. Really appreciate everyone giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California here today. Before we jump in, I'll tell you a little bit about SRECTrade. The company was founded back in 2008, currently over 40 employees, and we are 100% focused on a variety of environmental commodity markets across North America. As you'll see in the maps to the right, We focus on 10 different renewable energy and low carbon fuel standard markets across the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, and Western US. And we help facilitate transactions across 20 unique commodities covering electric vehicles and clean fuel, solar, wind, and other energy efficiency assets. Our company helps facilitate the management of renewable energy and low carbon fuel standard commodities across more than 40,000 clean energy assets. And in total, we have over 150,000 clean energy assets on our platform, utilizing our technology to help manage and monetize their environmental commodity portfolio. We pride ourselves on being regulatory and market experts. Head over to SRECTrade.com through our market research blog. You see a lot of information about what's happening across a variety of markets and how it impacts value and how you as a clean energy asset owner can take advantage of these markets. With regards to the California Low Carbon Fuel Standard, we've been involved in the market over the course of years, and especially as electricity as a fuel has been taking on a much bigger component of the program, and we have established workflow processes with CARB, and looking forward to telling you a little bit more about that here today. So we'll jump into an overview of the California Low Carbon Standard and how it works. At a very, very high level, the goal of the program is to reduce carbon intensity in transportation fuels by 20% by 2030 from a 2010 baseline. The California Air Resources Board is the regulator and provides program oversight. And the mechanism to show compliance in this program is through a credit, a carbon credit, which represents 1 metric ton of CO2 reduced. Credit sellers are primarily clean fuel generation unit owners, and that spans electric vehicle charging infrastructure, other gaseous and liquid fuels, whether it be biofuel, renewable diesel, CNG, and so forth. Folks that are producing those fuels can also qualify to produce credits. And the buyers of credits are traditional petroleum and oil refiners producing gasoline and diesel and so forth. And so as a result of those traditional gasoline and diesel fuels being more carbon intensive, effectively falling above that black line that you see in the chart below in the reddish orange section, they produce deficits. And as a result, they need to buy credits from folks that utilize fuels that are lower in carbon intensity. An LCFS credit does have a maximum value. We're going to talk about value and pricing dynamics in the coming slides. And this year, pricing is capped at just a little bit under $218 a ton. I think what's important to note is that this is market. The price of LCFS credits, it fluctuates over time. What we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months, in particular related to some new regulations that went in place, is very strong pricing. But over the course of the last few years, pricing has swung below $100 a metric ton to as high as around 200. So important to note that the price does fluctuate as a result of market dynamics. Here, I think Eric just put up a quick poll. We're just going to take a quick poll from participants to learn a little bit about what everyone understands about the market as you came into this webinar here today.
So people in the webinar, go ahead and we want to know, how much do you know about low carbon fuel standard here in California? If it's nothing, or if you just know the basics, or if you're an expert, go ahead and click right now, and we're going to keep the poll open for a couple more seconds, and then we'll share the results.
All right, great. Looks like we got the responses in here. Well, hopefully after the webinar, we'll get everyone up to at least somewhere between basic and expert level. So moving on to the next slide, this is just a very simple diagram that shows the flow of how things work effectively. On the inside, you have credit generators, sellers of credits, that's clean fuel vehicle infrastructure owners across all on different types of fuel types. That data gets reported to CARB, and as a result, credits are granted back to those asset owners, and credits are then purchased on an ongoing basis by large gasoline and diesel producers. I think what's important to note is that it's ongoing credit generation can help produce cash flow, offset operational expenses to cover these clean fuel costs, to cover the infrastructure of the initial investment, and help continue to drive the adoption of more clean vehicle assets.
Great, thanks, Stephen. So just wanted to get right to the meat and potatoes here of what was the expected value you can expect to see as an operator of electric vehicles, or any sort of clean vehicle in California. So in this presentation we're going to focus primarily on electric. There are multiple vehicle category types within the LCFS program that qualify for credits. As kind of Stephen mentioned before, you have electric, you have hydrogen, you have natural gas vehicles, all to varying degrees of credit. They generate various degrees of credit value. On the electric side, however, and we felt would be most relevant for HTA members, would be the heavy-duty electric vehicles and electric forklifts. As you can see here, we made several assumptions on just sort of what we foresee as typical usage in a year, and at 15 megawatt hours per year per forklift, you can expect up to $3,800 a forklift every single year. This is an ongoing program, as I'll sort of explain later about the program criteria, what exactly is needed, what would qualify, what doesn't qualify. But you can see here that it's pretty significant value. On the heavy duty vehicle side, you're looking at upwards of $16,000 a vehicle per year. Obviously, this also depends on credit price. We'll get into a little bit about a renewable energy credit, zero CI pairing, which is essentially any electricity that you're using, you're pairing it with renewables. You're saying that all the consumption that you've done for that vehicle has been completely green. And so there are multiple factors, but we help our customers kind of achieve the maximum value you could possibly get out of your vehicle and of that electricity consumption from those chargers that you use on your sites. So, as I said before, we can go over all other vehicle categories, but these are sort of the big ones that we're working with so far. This is really just an extrapolation of for forklifts, for example, right? So on the left side, you have the number of forklifts, the estimated annual number of credits, and the kind of foreseen net value you can receive from those credits. So you can see if you do have a fleet of these vehicles, it can add up fairly quickly. And these are ongoing revenue. So this is annual revenue that you're receiving from these vehicles if you haven't already. And even if you have vehicles that you've been using that are electric that you may not have registered with the program, they're still eligible. It's not like you have to do it on purchase. It can be registered at any time. So it's pretty substantial value. And for the heavy duty side, it's also it's a linear relationship between consumption and credit value generation. So the easiest way to think about it, the more you use your vehicles, the more credits you are going to get. Obviously with credit prices fluctuating, but that's from a fundamental level, that's how this works.
Did you want to ask, so we had another poll about if you guys are planning on purchasing any vehicles. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll right now. So go ahead and audience members, go ahead and click yes or no. Are you planning on purchasing an electric vehicle in the future? We'll keep it open for about half a minute, so give you guys a chance to vote. So about 80% of you, 80% of you, or 86% of you are planning on purchasing an electric vehicle in the future.
Awesome, really good to know. This is great. Yeah, as you can see, there is substantial value here, pretty much on any type of vehicle. And like I said before, it's not just heavy duty. I mean, even your vans, your light duty vehicles also qualify. So even if you have level 2 chargers on site, and it's just your corporate vehicles that are using those, like you are still going to get maybe not as much, but there is still credit value for any sort of electric or clean fuel dispenser that you have on site that you own. And so that's where I want to get into more of the specific details about the program criteria. The overarching goal of the program is really to increase adoption of clean vehicles in California. There are several, California is pretty rich on the incentive programs, right? So there are a lot of CapEx programs, a lot of vehicle incentive programs, HVIP, CORE. You're probably taking advantage of those in some form. You can consider those programs are really your upfront CapEx, right? They are one time, they can be competitive, they can be grant-based. The LCFS program is not competitive. It isn't grant-based. It is ongoing. It is additive registration of the assets. So it's linear in if you add more chargers and you're consuming more electricity from those chargers, you're going to be getting more credits. And like I said before, there are multiple vehicle types that are eligible for this. So even if you have multiple vehicles using the same charger, you are going to get credits to varying degrees depending on the vehicles. There are no limit on the number of vehicles that can qualify for the program. So it really is dependent on the chargers. And that is the key point here, is really number 5. The crediting, qualification for the crediting is based on the ownership of the fueling and or charging station. It isn't really related to the vehicle ownership. So that is key here. And the fleet owner really must own the chargers to generate the credits, or have a relationship where you can take advantage of the environmental credits if you have a sort of a shared ownership of the chargers. But that is the way CARB allocates credits is based on the charging owner asset or the charging station owner asset. It is an ongoing revenue. You can think of it as an OPEX subsidy, but really it's to drive electric vehicle adoption, but it is ongoing. And the way CARB issues credits is on a quarterly basis. And it is essentially for the life of the program. And as we can talk about, we know a lot about the sort of market dynamics here. We can discuss with you in person after the webinar about what is the state of the market, kind of projections on credit price, that sort of thing. And another feature of the California market is the ability to pair your consumption with zero carbon electricity. And this is really key. And what this does, obviously it allows you to say that all the electricity that is consumed by your vehicles is now coming from completely clean sources. So, not only have you switched to electric, you're using electricity that is now zero carbon, as opposed to the California grid, which is not completely clean. And with that, you actually get a bonus. So CARB gives you that additional delta in that grid average electricity versus clean electricity. And you can see in the bottom right here, you get increased crediting through this REC pairing methodology. So what's happening really is, and this is kind of where our expertise comes in. On the left side is what a typical person would do if you're not using zero carbon electricity. You're essentially just plugging it into the grid. You're charging your vehicles from the grid. You're getting X amount of LCFS credits, right, based on the carbon content of the grid. On the right side, you're going out and you're actually saying, all the electricity that we're using here is coming from solar or clean sources in California. And the way to do that is through REC pair, a renewable energy credit. So you can buy a renewable energy credit on the market. You can sort of pair them together with your LCFS credit, and then CARB will give you more credits from that sort of additional transaction, so to speak. And this is kind of because we've been in both we operate in both markets. We have this sort of deep expertise to go out and do this pairing methodology within that framework. And kind of just to show you the value here of why this is important. So, essentially there is a benefit to using this methodology, and it isn't non-substantial. There is some expertise required to actually do the credit transaction, purchasing the RECs, and also retiring the RECs. You're actually working in two markets, the solar REC market and the LCFS market. This is where some of our staff and we're really working to do this REC pairing on a quarterly basis. And on the right here, you see you're going from, this is for a heavy duty vehicle, you're going from like $13,000 to almost $14,000 to almost $16,000 in additional revenue just from this additional REC pairing methodology. And our fee structure, I haven't really talked about it yet, but our fee structure, it actually it declines over time, but it means you're getting higher revenue as your utilization increases over time. And I'm going to turn that over to Becca now to kind of go over a little bit more of the specifics of how an operator can work with us directly.
Thanks, Junaid. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so initially when you sign up with us, all you have to provide are the serial numbers and the locations of the chargers, and we essentially take care of the rest. And then every quarter thereafter, we will register any new chargers and request quarterly kilowatt-hour consumption data. We will then report that data to CARB, and once the credits are transacted, we will disperse that payment to you via ACH. Next slide, please. So all of the transaction details will then be available in your SRECTrade account. This includes asset tracking, asset level credit and revenue tracking, where you can enter in your payment information, as well as transaction statements, all of which can all easily be downloaded from our site. Next slide. And so, like Junaid kind of mentioned, registration and reporting are done on a quarterly basis. Payment will go out a few weeks after credit issuance, and then to maximize your credit amount, make sure to provide the charger information before the end of the quarter, as there's no retroactive crediting. I'll now pass it back to you, Junaid, to wrap up the last few slides.
Thanks, Becca, appreciate it. So, diving into, what are the roles here, and kind of, if you're kind of very new to this, like how does this work, and what is the value? So, what exactly are we doing? So you see on the left-hand side, we're really handling everything. As a fleet manager, your job is to really operate your fleet, right? Deploy the fleet, operate the fleet. What we would ask you, on a quarterly basis is really just to gather the kilowatt-hour data from your charging system. And generally, the software allows this to happen, and it is tracking for the most part, as long as it's metered. You generally have some sort of tracking software that you can export the data. So we would need that sort of on a quarterly basis, and using that data after the chargers have been registered, we're going to go out and do all the back-end work with the renewable energy credit pairing, getting the credits issued, selling the credits on the open market, and then getting the revenue from those credits. So there is a physical transaction that needs to happen. Once you get the credits on hand, you do need to go out and sell those credits. So we have those relationships with the oil companies, so we're going out and doing that. We're keeping track of the market. So essentially, what you really have to care about is continue operating your fleet, send us a quarterly data upload of your charger consumption, and then we will essentially transmit that LCFS credit revenue back into your account. It's really as simple as that. And again, this is sort of a quick snapshot of everything that we do. Like I said before, we really want to hold your hand throughout the entire process. We want to educate you on how everything works. We're very transparent in our fee structure. One thing is we don't actually have no upfront fee. There's no retainer of any kind. Our fee really is taken on the back end on the credit sale. So we only take it net of the credit sale. So you'll never actually see an invoice from us. We only send you your credit transaction report. And so you're essentially seeing just the credit revenue that you've been generating. And we are, pretty heavily involved with this regulation. and the markets as well. So we're interacting with the California Air Resources Board all the time, continuously getting market updates, kind of always monitoring the market, seeing how it's progressing over time. And obviously we have this, to do the whole rec pairing that I talked about before, you need a specific pathway that needs to be established, and we already have one of those established. And so we're using that for our current clients across the state. And some cool things we're working on. So we actually have an app that we're developing, which would quickly calculate, the amount of LCFS credits that you could potentially see, for your various vehicle types, and also the potential revenue you could see from that. Now, obviously, you guys here are, much more engaged already, and so you can just contact us directly, and we can do that projection for you. No matter how complex of your fleet is, right? So you may have just a few forklifts, like a lot of heavy-duty vehicles, some light-duty. So we can do all that sort of aggregated projection for you. But this is just a couple of items that we've been working on. And so that's it. This is our contact information. We can share this presentation with Eric, and probably share it to the group afterwards. But very happy to talk with you all afterwards if you want to. Just even from an education standpoint, love to teach you more about how the program works. And if you're not considering anything now, maybe in the future, we could definitely talk about that too. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate everyone joining here.
So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions in a moment. I did want to read one that we got via email as I'm unmuting everybody. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, is there any indication that there's going to be changes to this program, or extensions or retractions from the program from the California Air Resources Board?
Stephen, you want to take that? He might be on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Can everyone hear me okay now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. No retractions to the program given the pandemic. The one thing to take into consideration, as we touched on this earlier on about changes in market pricing, what drives demand for the credits from larger gasoline and diesel producers and deficit producers that have an obligation in the market is consumption of gasoline and diesel in the state. So certainly during this time, especially as many folks within the state of California are sheltered in place, there's less consumption of gasoline, not as much fuel is being consumed. So that does have some impact on demand. We did see, even over the course of the last 4 to 6 weeks, some swings in pricing. Things have kind of rebounded up into the low to mid 190s as of late in the spot market. But we did see some fluctuating pricing given the expectation that there might be less demand for credit. So that does have some impacts. But overall, the program is very well intact and is scheduled to have continued carbon intensity reductions out to 2030. And then as it stands right now, that carbon intensity reduction would be mandated to remain in place. And even further guidance from CARB as of late is that there will be continued evaluation of reducing carbon intensity even below the 20% benchmark by 2030. So I think we'll continue to see this program be a driver of value for clean fuels and low carbon fuels for many years to come.
Thank you. So I'm going to start unmuting people. If you're not speaking, I ask that you mute yourself so we don't want to get any crazy elevator music or anything if we get put on hold. Sue, you had a question?
Hi, thanks so much. I'm Sue Dexter. I'm actually a researcher at USC, and this is very interesting. And I have a question regarding the charger that's installed. If it's installed on a leased property, even though the fleet owner is actually paying for its installation, that still is a credit to the fleet owner, right? Not opposed to the landowner?
Hey, Susan, it's Junaid here. I think I can take that question. Yeah, good question. So, yeah, it does get tricky. I understand a lot of folks have this sort of, they may not be the owner of the charger. It really depends. what the contract looks like between the fleet operator and the charging station owner, right? So you could have a fleet operator. You really have to take ownership of any kind of environmental attributes of the chargers. And if the charging station owner, if they're savvy enough and they say we're going to keep all the environmental attributes, i.e. the LCFS credits, then it really has to be negotiated between the fleet operator and that charging station owner on who gets the credits, because there may be a situation where we've seen these situations where the actual the fueling station owner is providing some sort of benefit, or maybe they're charging a lower cost of electricity or something like that as a benefit to the fleet operator, right? But knowing that on the back end they are receiving these credits, and maybe they're using that as to kind of offset some of those costs. So it really is specific to that negotiated contract between the fleet owner and the charging station owner.
I'll just add in the regulation by default, as Junaid spoke earlier in the slides, is it defaults to the owner of the charging station. That's who's first in line to make the credit claim.
Thank you. William, I see that you have been muted. Do you have a question? Looks like perhaps not. We also had a question from Jack. Jack, are you able to speak? I'll go ahead and just read the question. So, if I just own the truck and I don't own my own fueling stations, does SRECTrade provide any service where I can pair up with a fueling station and you guys can help us negotiate those credits?
So
Yeah, I'm happy.
go ahead, Steven.
Oh no, go ahead, Junaid. No problem.
Yeah, I would say we generally do not do that sort of arrangement, so to speak. It's very specific to that relationship. It would be difficult for us to understand sort of the operational, how it works operationally, and sort of what rates folks are charging to use the chargers, no pun intended. But it would be difficult for us to figure that out. You really do have to talk with whoever is the lease owner to say, hey, we are paying for the electricity. Could we change? If you're able to change that contract to say the fleet operator would be the recipient of the credits, then yes, you could take advantage of those, and then we could come in afterwards, and once we have that proof that you are the credit recipient, you would essentially, how it would work on operational level is you would designate us as the recipient on your behalf, and then we would do the whole process for you. But that first stage really has to be done with that property owner. Now, so if you think it's, we can obviously talk about whether you'd like us to educate the property owner or the leasing agent on how this works, but more than likely, once they know about this value, if they don't know already, they may want to keep those credits themselves. So, there is a risk there.
Thank you. We had a question in the question box. Regarding the recent extreme drop in oil pricing, does that figure into this credit program as the whole in terms of the pricing of the individual credits and the program as a whole? They want to know how the recent oil price drop affects it.
Steven, you want to take this one?
Sure. It has more to do with the demand for gasoline and diesel products and the consumption, because that's what drives the need to procure credits, right? The more gasoline and diesel, higher carbon fuels on the slide that we're looking at that fall into that reddish orange category or side of the chart above the CI standard, the more of that fuel that's being consumed, the more deficits produced, and as a result, the more deficits produced, the more credits need to be bought to offset those deficits. So even if gasoline is declining in price, right, like we're seeing in the marketplace right now, if that gasoline is not being consumed, less deficits are being produced, and less credits need to be bought. So it has more to do with the supply and demand and ultimately the underlying consumption of those higher carbon intensive fuels.
Cool. Understood. Sue, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. One other question I have is that you showed a chart that said by utilizing the zero carbon electricity that you could get a bump up to approximately 16,000 for a heavy duty truck. Do you have a matrix that shows by different classifications of electric trucks and those kinds of things what the approximate value would be for this, based upon, of course, again, I understand it's not actually the truck, it's the charging infrastructure and the kilowatt hours that you're generating out of it. But do you have something like that you could share on that? Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, yeah, we could definitely talk afterwards. There are, so the way those are calculated, and this is getting very technical here, is there's a specific variable called the energy efficiency ratio of the vehicle class, and you plug that into their formula, and that's how you're essentially getting the various the relative values that can be generated from these. So yeah, for each class there is, depending on how many kilowatt hours you input, you're going to get various crediting values coming out of that. But we could talk offline if you'd like to discuss more about that information.
Thank you, guys. Are there any more questions from the audience? I see some people unmuted themselves and muted themselves back on. You're welcome to speak up. I think it was one of the Matthews, perhaps, unmuted themselves and remuted.
Lois Campbell.
So it looks like there are no more questions at this time. If people wanted to, can you put your the slide for your contact information again so people can take that down?
Yeah,
and
sure.
if you don't have access to the visual right now, go ahead and email me, and I'm sure I can, they don't mind me passing you on to them.
Yep.
To get you guys connected. Is there any last comments you guys want to make, or?
No, just wanted to thank everyone for joining today. Happy to be an education resource here on this program. If you are, planning on purchasing an electric vehicle in the future, please reach out to us. Or even if you just want an estimate of what this program could do for your operations or any other questions you have, happy to discuss further as well. Stephen, do you have anything else before we go?
No, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. Feel free to contact us here. cleanfuels@srectrade.com is also a general email box that you can get us at. So if you don't have the visual in front of you, cleanfuels@srectrade, SRECtrade.com is easy enough, and look forward to working with you. Thanks so much, and hope everyone stays safe and healthy during this time.
All right, thank you, everyone, and we really want to thank SRECTrade for putting this on for us. They're a new sponsor for the HTA, so we want to hear, we're glad to welcome them aboard, and we hope you guys interact. When we finally get to be able to meet in person again, I'm sure everyone's gonna want to meet you in person and shake your hand if we're allowed to do that at the time.
Yeah, hope so.
So if you have any questions about the presentation, you can also reach out to me, eric@harbortrucker.com. And thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, send them our way.
Thanks, everyone.